watching the ocean swirl. I like her a lot, her flip-flops are hot. Flip-flop girl. Hello and welcome to the Trygesis Thursday weekly newsletter. This is volume 2, number 7. Already our 7th newsletter of this new year. And every week we try to make the content and the newsletter better, more interesting, etc. And I really do believe this is our best newsletter ever. You be the judge though. So one thing we try to do is I'm trying to make them a little shorter. There's just so much information that we want to convey to people. And but I think sometimes these hour-long newsletters, maybe they get a little tedious. So this one's a little shorter, and I'm going to jump right into it. So the first song you just heard at the top of the show here, that was an excerpt from our newest song, Flip Flop Girl. It's been officially released, and it's available on YouTube and Spotify that I know of. And in the coming days, it'll be available on all up to like 150 streaming services. That's like, iTunes and Amazon and Deezer, Qbuzz. It goes on and on. There's so many I can't name them all. But 150 different streaming platforms, and there's more to come, I'm sure, as time goes on. But they are in the queue. The song is in the queue, and so I don't know which platform you listen to, but you can find it immediately on YouTube or Spotify. So please take a minute to look it up, and also you'll hear our other songs on those streaming services. The songs appear under our band name, Trygesis. So on to today's newsletter topic, which is musicianship. Now, before we really dive in deep, I just want to say these videos we make primarily serve two purposes. One, we want to get the word out about the music we are creating, and if people enjoy the music, they can follow along via video on our musical journey. And two, we want to help young people who are just getting started out in music to learn about the music business and the opportunities in the industry. And as time goes on, we're going to keep adding to the body of knowledge so that there's a resource people might want to turn to for more information based on our years of experience as songwriters and being involved in the business. So we certainly don't know everything, but we usually know where to find the answers. We know a lot of people. We know a lot of other local musicians and musicians across the country. So we've had after all these years, we've learned a thing or two. So feel free to reach out to us. You can text us at the number on the screen, and we will get back to you. That's our business line. I don't check it every day, but I do check it pretty often. And if I see a message or get a voicemail, we'll get in touch with you. Text is best. I can't promise I'll listen to voicemails. I don't know if anybody plays voicemails anymore, but text is best. So on to our topic, musicianship. Now first, Swift made a couple videos for this week's show, and that will get us started, and I'm going to follow up with a few thoughts. So Swift, take it away.
What happens when you can't play the way you want to play? You find a way you can play and ride your strengths. I used to want to play like in the league with Jimi Hendrix, Lowell George, Phil Keaggy, Chet Atkins, Eric Clapton, Django Reinhardt, Steve Howe, Steve Morse, Jeff Beck, Al Di Meola, Dave Morgan, Gary Moore, Mark O'Connor, Tony Rice, Carlos Santana, Brian May, Mark Knopfler, John Renborn, Robin Trower, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Joe Walsh. Never could quite get there. And just because you want to be on stage is no indication of talent. So, to my surprise, I noticed I could play and write kind of melodically. I've read that some players and singers will look for a melody by pretending they're a horn player and coming up with a horn part, but that becomes the vocal melody. Well, you can transfer that to guitar. I found them more suited to subtle melodic, simple playing, kind of from the 50s in a lot of cases, like Scotty Moore, James Burton, Peter Green, Cliff Gallup, David Gilmour, Paul Kossoff was a master, Robbie Krieger, Pete Townsend, Steve Cropper, Mick Taylor. Simplistic but very effective, and they've got great taste. So if you can't be Malmsteen, just be John Fogerty. He gets the job done, and actually he's more popular than Malmsteen. So what can you say? Just find what works for you. If you can go like lightning, go like lightning. If you can't, just cruise down the hill. Hey, I thought of a couple songwriting tricks. If you're ever having a hang-up getting something done, I found that even when I was writing nothing but rock songs, I found it harder to write on an electric guitar than an acoustic. The stuff was never going to get played on an acoustic, but somehow I found the writing easier. So if you have an acoustic lying around, bash around on that, and then when you transfer it to electric, I think the power will surprise you. That's a good trick. My dad has a beautiful 1948 Gibson hollow body electric guitar that I hate, even though it's beautiful. But I've written a ton of songs on it because it's all the only acoustic I had on hand when I was writing metal songs. And then I would grab my trusty Silvertone, then Gibson SG, and then a Ibanez double neck, and crank up the amp. And it's kind of exciting what happens when you take an acoustic guitar song and electrify it. And another thing is, I mentioned before, I think, coming up with riffs is great. But try to think like a singer or a horn player or maybe even a violinist. Hum the melody, create it that way before. Don't just try to figure it out on guitar. I'm a lot better at scat singing and noticing, record it and noticing something that's very catchy, and then you just repeat it and repeat it. Another thing is stand up when you rehearse, especially if you're in a rock band. Jazz too, I suppose, even though that might be more conducive sitting down. But I remember a story about Aerosmith had an album rejected. It just had no energy. And they realized they'd all been sitting down when they recorded the thing. And I tell you, it is a whole different energy when everybody in the band, and I mean everybody except the drummer, is standing. Something about the energy. So a couple tips there. Actually 3. I can't count. That's why I play guitar.
All right, thanks a lot, Swift. That was great. So they say you need to practice 10,000 hours to master a musical instrument, or to master your craft, whatever it is, 10,000 hours. That's kind of the rule of thumb, right? So that might be true, but think of it like skiing. And I think Bob Lefsetz made a good point about this in his recent newsletter. He said if you want to win an Olympic gold medal, say, or be an elite world-class skier, you don't spend 10,000 hours practicing on the bunny slope. If you're going to be great, you got to move on to more challenging endeavors. So to be a great musician, you're going to need to push yourself to the limit. And by that, I mean, you got to play more difficult songs, play with other musicians, study your instrument, learn from the masters, etc. But you also have to realize you can't always push yourself to the limit, because just like an athlete, you risk injury. So if you're trying to play super fast and be a shredder, and you're doing that, 8 hours a day, you might get some carpal tunnel syndrome or some arthritis or whatever happens when you overuse your muscles. So moderation is also important. But, part of that 10,000 hours, it doesn't have to be playing. It could be studying too. It's all important. All that's important. The next thing is that hard work alone is not going to make you a great musician. You need to practice smartly. You need to tackle compositions of greater difficulty as your skills progress. you're not going to play the most difficult piece right away, right? You start out small, learning the basics, and then you gradually, as your skill set increases, you tackle more difficult pieces. So it's like you can't cram your practice into an all-night session and then expect to deliver an A+ performance the next day. It just takes time to become great. And like any athlete, your skills will diminish over time. When you're a lot older, you're not going to be able to shred like you were when you were 20 or 25. But you do learn more tricks and you develop expertise and you learn to work smarter. And you learn artistry, and maybe that's the most important thing, learning the art. So experienced NFL quarterbacks like to say that the game slows down as they gain more experience. And that's because they know the game so well they can anticipate what the defense is going to do. The great quarterbacks can counterattack the defense. And the better you get and the more experienced you are, the easier it becomes to play music. It's like playing basketball. When you're a kid, basketball's not a lot of fun for a lot of kids because it's hard to learn at first, dribbling the ball and having control and shooting. You can't get the ball to the 10-foot hoop. But once you master the fundamentals, then basketball becomes a great game. And sort of like, I guess when you drive into the lane and you're surrounded by 3 or 4 defenders and you go up for the layup and you have 3 or 4 options to pass it out, make the layup, reverse layup, scoop, whatever you do. That's when the game becomes fun. But it takes a long time to get to that level. So, and there's no one who can tell you exactly how to do it. I mean, we can point you in the right direction, but ultimately, it's up to you to find your own way. And that's the path to mastery, finding your own way. Now, I really enjoy going to see some of the local bands in Salem, Ohio, where I grew up and where I live now. And there are several musicians in those bands who have decades, I mean decades of experience. I think Denny Wright has been playing for 7 decades now, or is it 8? 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 2000, 2010. 8 decades he's been playing. I mean, that is someone who has mastered their instrument, and he's still doing it. It's amazing. And I love going to see him play. There are also some solo musicians who are amazing too. I mean, Jan Schaefer, top of mind, because she played for years in New Orleans, and she knows, like, you name a pop song, and she can play it. And if she doesn't know it, she'll grab the sheet music and play it. She probably knows it, but with the sheet music, then it just comes out. It's amazing. So those people have mastered their instruments. So yeah, they can play and they can sound like the record and they can play any song, but more importantly, they also know how and when to deviate from those songs and add their own little personal touches, their own little flair. And that makes the songs even better because in the moment, they're creating. That's where their artistry starts to show. It's similar to what jazz musicians do. Those personalized touches that they add are what turns them from musicians into artists, into masters, right? For example, the ability that makes a violinist of an orchestra more than a musician and turns them into an artist is the expression they put into their performance. Anybody can do that, but they put that emotion in. That's when they become the artist. So I can think of 2 well-known local rock guitarists who understand this. You look at Mark Shearing and Dave Morgan. They've been around a long time, and I love to go see them play because they know so much. Their knowledge is so extensive. I mean, 1, they've mastered their instruments, but 2, the things they can do with their instruments, it's just incredible. So I love to go see them play. And there are some young guys coming up who are working their way up to that level too. I mean, they're phenomenal. So friends, think of Jeff Dangle on drums. Man, he's been around a long time, and he is so good. And then there's my good friend Kevin McElwain. When he came to play, I had not heard Kevin play in years, but he sat down to play with us at our studio, and he was just amazing. And I saw Bill Henshoff play last summer, and he's just solid as a rock, so good. And so yeah, that's pretty exciting. When you go see these guys play, you never know what they're going to do, and it's so fun to watch. Like I said, they have decades of experience, and the musical expression is what elevates them from just musicians to artists at the master level. So it's hard to define, but you recognize this mastery and artistry when you hear it. That's the magic, and magic is the key word. That magic that they have is what makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck, right? When you hear it, you know it. It's hard to define it, but when it happens, maybe it's playing in the pocket, maybe it's playing behind the beat or in front of the beat. It's all these things. It's just, they know it intuitively because they have the experience and they just understand the artistic side of it. Now, I really believe we're in the golden age for musicians. I don't know if there's ever been a time where music was in greater demand. It's everywhere. I mean, from K through 12 in schools, in colleges, local theater, theatrical plays, Broadway plays. There's musicians in the pit orchestras on Broadway, or Las Vegas stage shows, Disneyland shows, television shows, motion pictures, TV commercials, corporate events, studio musicians, recording engineers, record producers, record executives, publishing companies, songwriters, arrangers, composers, social media, touring musicians, and even making music and sound effects for video games. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And many of these skills overlap. A record producer is often also an accomplished musician, composer, and arranger. But sometimes a record producer will also hire musicians to write, compose, or arrange. So there are opportunities everywhere. And I don't know if there's ever been more than there are now. So I think as a young musician coming up, you just have to find your niche, and figure out where you fit in, what interests you, and then follow that path. Now, to get on that path, this is a little interesting take. This is more of a motivational part of this video. So we'll start by saying there's two driving forces behind all human behavior. Two driving forces behind all human behavior. So, as a musician, how do you get to the mastery level? Now we know it's not enough just to practice 10,000 hours. You have to be smart about how you practice, and you also have to have passion. The passion is what motivates you. People say, oh, that so-and-so is lazy. Well, it's not that so-and-so is lazy. It's that they just haven't found their passion. Because once you find your passion, that is a huge part of being motivated. And if you have a big enough why, you will be motivated. But if practice is painful, then you're probably not going to practice too much. So you have to have that that why you're practicing. That's probably why it's so young for kids. So difficult for young kids to, the parents are forcing them to practice. Go play your piano, go play your clarinet or whatever. Well, they don't see, what's down the road on the other side. So maybe you have to help explain that. So, the two driving forces behind all human behavior. It's one, the need to avoid pain, and two, the need to seek pleasure. It's really that simple. As a human being, or any being, you're always trying to avoid pain, and you're always trying to move towards pleasure. If something's painful, you avoid it. If something's pleasurable, you move toward it. I don't think there's any exceptions. Let's say you're in the middle of a romantic dinner with your significant other, and that's a really pleasurable moment, and you want to continue moving in that direction, but all of a sudden out of nowhere, a earthquake earthquake strikes. Well, that signals danger and extreme fear probably. And fear is painful. So no matter how good that romantic date was, you're probably going to move towards safety somewhere because the pain or the fear of the earthquake is more painful than the pleasure in that moment of the romantic dinner. So we move away from fear, we move towards safety, and that safety represents pleasure. Now, I don't know if I've ever heard of any exception to the pain or pleasure that drive human behavior. I mean, you think about it, they're on the same scale, right? On one side you have pain, one side you have pleasure, and then maybe boredom in the middle. But it's an emotion, fear and pleasure, and we're always moving towards the pleasure, and we're moving away from the fear. And try to avoid the middle, boredom. Probably not where you want to spend much time. But here's the thing. Practicing an instrument can be boring and sometimes painful. And if you practice too much, you can get injured. If you're trying to learn a new piece and you're getting frustrated by your lack of progress, that can be painful also. Sorry, I'm trying to get my notes here. My screen won't move there. So your lack of progress, learning that new piece can be painful. So the key to getting beyond that pain that's holding you back is to focus on what you're going to gain by spending time out in the woodshed, working towards mastering your instrument and getting that 10,000 hours in. In that moment of practice, it might be painful to practice that same lick, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times to master it. But ultimately, when you do master it, it's going to mean great pleasure when you can play it with ease and you get to hear how it sounds within the context of what comes before and what comes after that lick. In the song, you have this leading up to that lick, you play the lick, and then you have what's after it. And when that works and you nail it, that's what makes people's hair stand up on the back of their neck. And that's the magic. That's the art. So I hope that all makes sense. Next week, we'll talk about the 4 levels of human experience and whatever topic we can think of between now and then. But I think you might be interested in the four levels of human experience. What we all want to get to is the peak experience. And I'm going to explain to you how to get to a peak experience. And that peak experience is when you nail that riff and people go crazy. That's what we all want. We want that moment. Or hitting a home run. I guess that would be a peak experience. Or making a goal in soccer. That's what we all strive for. And in order to reach that level, it takes a lot of effort. But the payoff is worth it. So I'll leave you with those words for today and see you on the next Trygesis Thursday and volume 2, number 8. That'll be our 8th week. So pretty exciting. Get to that, get that message out next week because there's a lot I can say about it. So take care. Talk to you then.
Flip flop girl, watching the ocean swirl. I like her a lot. Her flip flops are hot. Flip flop girl. I headed west to California. I needed the sun. I left my home in Salem, Ohio, searching for a special one. Those California girls are tanning every day. There's one that caught my eye, I could not look away. Flip-flop girl, watching the palm leaves twirl. She stands in the shade, wearing flip-flops of suede. Flip-flop girl. I stroll along the the sand, her feet zebra striped tan, flip-flop girl. I just wanna meet her, her feet'll soon reveal if she's the right one. When I see her walking, if her flip-flops do the talking, she's my true love. I just want to feel us walking hand in hand, her flip-flops spraying sand around our knees.